Tia here. I'm watching Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV, very educative program. Please subscribe, like, and share. Bless up, Aya.
Hi, welcome back to Live for Love TV. Today's the 4th day of the 6th month of the 24th year inside the 21st century. Hope everyone's doing extremely well out there. I have to come inside today because it's a bit muggy and raining out there, so we're inside for a change. But listen, I really have to speak about something that, another thing that I noticed over the years of my short life, let's say, and it's called loneliness. Now, when I talk about loneliness, I want to differentiate between being alone and loneliness. When you're alone, and I'm saying, and I'm defining it this way, when someone is taking time alone, they're having some spiritual growth, some personal development. That's alone. But loneliness is when you're not doing that. You're actually lonely. You don't have people around you, or you don't have people to converse with, and you're not growing, and you don't know how to grow by yourself. So that's loneliness. It feels like a million years ago when I was over in the UK doing that 9-to-5 grind alongside, had my finger in a few other pies. Never left the 9-to-5 grind because that's the way I was brought up, and that's the way my family are bred. So I was always in the 9-to-5. And I did a few different jobs over the years, and one of the jobs I did brought me into contact with people I would never have been brought into contact with. And I had to go to people's houses, and to complete my job, most of the time I'd have to go into their houses. And something I noticed at the time, this is going back 30 years, something I noticed at the time was often when I'd go to people's houses, especially people who were over 60, 70, some of the what you call retired people, they were so lonely. In fact, they were so lonely it was difficult to do my job, because sometimes I was the only point of contact that many people would have throughout the day, and they never wanted you to leave. They started to in your ear and talk to you and stuff like that. You try to be cordial, but you're doing the job. You're on a clock, so you got to hit and move in the job. And I mean, at first you think it's nothing, then you start to realize the number of people that are lonely. But many of these people who were lonely, indigenous people to the UK, what was surprising to me as a younger man was that they had neighbors everywhere. Obviously, it wasn't like they were in a rural area where they lived by themselves. They had their neighbors. Some of them had children living somewhere, family members and stuff like that. Yet they were extremely lonely. And when they spoke to me, I'm a good listener. I can pick things out quite quickly. And it was quite clear to me the reason they were lonely was basically down to their own attitudes. They had an attitude of very judgmental, very other people are wrong and they're okay. The guy across the road, he parks here, he's this, he's that. They don't like him, they don't like their daughter's husband, their son's this, and you hear all of these stuff, and you think to yourself, wow, what a judgmental person. No wonder they're lonely. And it hit me at the time that the increase in population was going on at that time, where, I don't know, what was it, 7 billion something at that time. Now it's gone over 8 billion. That the more people that are in the world is the more lonely, especially in Western societies and so-called first world countries, that is the more lonely people are. And they're lonely for the same reason these people were lonely. And this is, I said indigenous people, but this is true of people all in modern countries all over the place. People who I knew and grew with, you ask them about their best friend. Oh, I haven't spoken to him and this person, oh, I haven't talked to him, or I don't see him anymore. And you hear it constantly, where you start thinking to yourself, there's something going on here. There's something going wrong with our characters, with our behaviors. As a young man in my family, I always was a very family-oriented person. I'd pop around to everybody, you know, and it's just the way I am. And I think the reason I never really had that judgmental character towards other people, families or friends, was I always knew that everybody, and that includes myself, had issues. I never considered a period where there was something wrong with the man across the road and nothing wrong with me. And it's never occurred to me. But I noticed lots of people in my family thought like that. They'd say something, or people who were close friends of mine would say things about people, and that's what they said about people would cause them not to talk to the person or call them or be interested in them, and they'll be trying to get you close to them and talk. And I'm listening, I'm thinking, but can't you hear yourself that you're judgmental? You think you're okay. You think there's nothing wrong with you. You think, yeah, and you think there's only a problem with other people, like how we find people who think there's only problems with other races or other religions or other, men with women or women with men. Or there's problems. I mean, I was open enough with myself to realize a lot of my faults. I tried to clean them up. You clean up a few here, you clean up a few there. Maybe you had a few, or maybe you had them all the time, and they become more noticeable as you clean up a few of your faults. But because I would hate to be condemned for any of my faults growing up and going along the road, especially faults I didn't know I had, I would never condemn anyone for their faults. I don't necessarily gonna agree with things that people do, and sometimes I'll say, okay, that guy is behaving like that, I'm gonna keep my distance from him. But if he came across me anywhere on the road or the street or anywhere, and he was cordial to me, I was cordial to him. I was always like that with people, and I always will be like that with people, unless they show me directly a bad face or they come at me a certain way. They're not going to really see that side of me. And loneliness is killing people in the Western society. It's driving them potty. They're losing their lives before their time. I mean, loneliness has been researched lots and lots of times, and if you're into research, you can go and look it up even on the internet or somewhere and see that people who are lonely, who have less friends, who have less contact with people, these people's lifespans are shorter. There is no doubt about this. Even when you go to the common hospital, if you go into any hospital waiting room, the people who have the majority of visitors that come in the morning and the evening or the afternoon, believe me, they usually survive longer than someone who's all in the hospital all by themselves with nobody coming to visit them. It's just a fact of life. We have a sort of internal clock or internal being about us that when it feels like no one cares about us or we're not connecting with people, something inside of us starts to die and dwindle, that light starts to go down. So I would implore people, like I have with Live for Love TV, is to live with love. Love makes you see people and you can tell what's wrong with them, but you don't judge them for it. You don't say to yourself, well, him are this and she's that, therefore I ain't never going to talk to this person, or they're beneath me, or they're this, or they're that. People have their errors and their faults and their behavior, and you have them too. I mean, it's crazy for someone to say they can walk through this earth without having any faults, or without getting, it's like somebody saying they can walk in the rain like it is right now without getting wet. That's just not going to happen. So I just think that loneliness, it's becoming a disease, and it's frightening to see as I get older how many people, when they talk to me, I can tell how lonely they are. They don't realize it when they're talking to me. I can hear it, and I know why they're lonely. Just as I said in the beginning of this video, they're very judgmental. Now, I'm not saying we all don't have a judgmental bone in us, or we don't judge people or think this or that, but we have to, even if we think something about somebody or we have a view about them, we have to forget them for that view and say, yeah, but I swear to God, that's who they are. I'm still cool with them. You can't back away from them thinking that you're better than them and that they do things you don't like, therefore you're going to stay away from them. Because this is what I was seeing when I was at work with people, and it was amazing to see how many people were lonely. And the funny thing is, it seemed like the newer the immigrants in the country were, the less they were likely to get lonely, because their cultures they were coming from was sticking together, was still eating together, still being, one, everybody having dinner at the same time, like probably all the cultures had at one point. But when you go to places like America, the UK, Canada, everybody's in their own room, everybody's eating at their own time, everybody's eating their own meal, nobody wants to eat the same meals as anybody else. And breaking bread together was one of the things that kept people together back in the day. It doesn't seem to happen too much in modern societies now. Everyone's too rushed, everyone got to grab a bite to eat, maybe a sandwich, grab something at the fast food, whatever, the deli as they say. And if you don't eat and break bread together, chances of you coming together on any other way, especially as you get older. When you're young, it's not so bad because you're going to find ways. You're going to party, you're going to go to places, you're going to go down to the seaside at the weekends. You're going to do all this stuff that young people do. and you'll be a little bit more socialized, but it won't last. I've done a video recently about Vivica Fox and Beyonce, but Vivica A. Fox, and she's basically lonely and desperate, and you know, she was literally saying, as if you've sure most of you've seen the videos by now, that she's ready for a husband, she's ready to settle down, and she's 60 years old. Now, I said before, and I'll say it again, it's not that I repeat, but it's part of the loneliness argument, is that she, when she was hot in her 20s and 30s, never thought that she could be lonely, because there's always going to be eyes on her, and she's got money, she's, you know, in the limelight, fame and all that kind of stuff. She never considered people's characters, her own character and other people's characters, and thought to myself, let me improve my character so that people will always want to be around me. People will always want to know me. People will always be happy to see me, even if my nose is a little bit out of joint, you know. That's what we can do, but people have no interest in that. While their money's strong or whatever they're doing is good, they're young, they're fit, and they're enabled, they think that's going to go on forever. They really don't know. And then as they get older, without developing, like I said, when you're alone, you can develop that spiritual character. Without developing that character, there's no draw, there's no light for people to come towards you. You know, no matter what you think, you know, you may, I mean, I know some, my God, do I know some miserable people, males and females. And they're people I've known for a long time. And I try to, but it's just, you know, no matter what you do, they just can't brighten up. They just can't lighten up. They can't, there's always something wrong with somebody else. There's always something wrong with the world, the system, Babylon. I don't care what name they use, the Matrix. There's something wrong with everything. What they don't realize is how much there is something wrong with them, and that the light in them is diminishing. Because I don't care about anything you talk about, systems or people or whatever. If that light's still in you, then you wouldn't even be bothered complaining about people across the road and how negative that man is. And this is a very, very sad way to live. It leads to what I said with Vivica Fox and people like her, females like her. People are telling me to this day that she's a successful woman. I see that as a 60-year-old woman, I don't care who she is, but a 60-year-old woman desperately saying she'll go out with anybody. Basically, if you've got any friends, you know, she says, if you've got any friends or, you know, any nations, you know how I roll. I'm basically desperate. I mean, how do people, I know my culture says anybody who's got money or has got fame or got their face on TV or on a YouTube, I don't know, is successful. It's crazy. I've never upheld or held to this success that's in our culture. It's disgraceful to me. I laugh at it. From I'm young, I've been laughing at it. I grew up on the semi on the road, you know, a lot, and people were successful then. You know, back on the road, this guy's this, he's got that, he's an XJS, he's got the money, and he's rolling, and he's fly. And I'm looking, I'm thinking to myself, my God, what makes him successful? I've never heard a sensible word come out of this man's mouth. I've never heard a kind word come out of his mouth. And people have the gall to claim he's successful. These are people who will then claim to be religious. You know, they'll come and say, oh, I believe in Christ, and I believe in and then they're thinking, hold a minute, which Christ would say that what somebody has or what somebody's attained makes them successful? I've never heard of that Christ. I've never read it about that Christ. I don't know that Christ. That sounds a strange way to conceive. You know, success is many things, and you can define it for yourself. But what success is not is when you cover over your failings, when you cover over it with material stuff and money, which a lot of us try to do. That can't be success, and we've seen it with, like I say, this female here now, that she's been unsuccessful for a long time. If you come to me with an application for a job, and I look and say, you're 60 years old, you want to work, no problem. I look at your resume and I realize you've had 50 jobs or 60 jobs. You never really stayed in any job longer than maybe 3 or 4 years, 5 years at the most, and you're bumping around from job to job to job. I'm looking at you and thinking, I need someone who's going to stay at the job that I want them and do the job and have that job and be able to hold that job. You're not going to fit the bill. If you come for a job with me, you're not going to fit that bill. I'd rather try either someone who's been in a company before for 20 years and tried their best to keep it going and then eventually moved on, or somebody who's very young and not yet tainted and try and see if they'll hang around the business. I don't want someone like that. And this is what some of these females are like. They've had job after job, man after man after man. They've racked up the men, and now they're coming to a certain age and they're saying they're looking for, who are you looking for? Who's going to employ you? Who wants you? Why would they want you? Even if they love you and look at you and think, oh my God, I like her. They're still going to say to themselves, this woman there, she's got no staying power. You know, women have power. They have the power to attract us, to get us to come forward, to move across the dance floor, to walk out of our way and come and say hi or whatever. But to get us to stick around, that's a whole nother story. To get any man to stay around you, you better have some qualities. And those qualities have got to go more than skin deep. Anyway, thanks for listening. Take care. Live for Love TV.
Like, share, subscribe to Live for Love TV.